Who am I?
Richard Kazimer, media veteran.
Why I got in radio is because I'm good with a knife.
Contributor in Perth, Australia.
Our friend Richard Kazimer in the United States.
How are you guys enjoying the 19th century? Is that working out for you? How can you say, I'm not making fun of you as a race, I'm making fun of you as black performers?
I think as a country, Americans are as patriotic as the most rabid UK football hooligan.
Who am I?
Richard S. Kazimer.
Balls Radio with Phil Dobbie. What's really going on?
Well, that is an excellent question, isn't it? Don't expect us to answer it in the next 60 minutes, but hopefully provide some entertainment, as we always try to do here on Balls Radio. We're going to look at the US economy doing well, apparently. How well, though? Or is it all just bravado and hype, and underlying it all, it's still a bit of a basket case? The CIA snooping on the people who are supposed to be keeping an eye on them. Accountability and intelligence services, they're things that don't normally get talked about in the same sentence, are they? Also, Bitcoin. Who started it and who cares? Quite frankly. Now, let's get on with the business at hand. Richard Kazimer is in the United States. Now, interestingly, this will make no difference to you because you're listening to a podcast. We don't know when you're listening to this, but they are an hour different now in the United States. I knew, Richard Kazimer, I knew there was something different about you. You are an hour different. Just looking at you, you can't really tell. But here, we don't change our clocks. Australia's a bit slow on this sort of thing. We don't do it till next weekend.
It could be that I shaved this morning just for you, so that probably has a lot to do with it. Every time we change the clocks, I shave. Oh, that's the only reason I do it.
Well, you being English, every time we change the clocks, I have a bath. So it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? Really, but this is. I mean, I was thinking about this whole, changing the clocks thing, and I think we put them forward and we put them back, and then we put them forward. It gets a bit repetitive, and I would have thought, why don't we just add the hours and not take them off? Because we do that with money, don't we? You've got this whole thing with quantitative easing in the United States where you pump money into the economy. Why not pump hours into the economy? Is it a good idea or a bad idea? You see where I'm going with this? You could keep on adding hours, and therefore, however long it takes to get the economy corrected, you'd have more time to do it. Just a thought.
Don't think it works that way, but about the daylight savings, that is, the U.S. has done it on and off for centuries. It goes back to colonial times, and then then they did it during the war, then they stopped it, and then they finally, I think back in the 50s, they started doing it on a national scale. But not every state does it, just like in Australia.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's been a lot of studies on it, whether or not it has any effect on the economy or highway fatalities or whatnot, and the jury's still out. We just do it because we like the feeling of getting up and having sunshine
in the morning
during the day.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's.
But it does fade the curtains and confuse the cows. I mean, that's the downside of it. So, how many time zones do you end up with at the worst? Because I think in Australia we end up at one point for such a small population. I think we have 4 different time zones at some point.
We have 4 time zones.
But you're always 4 time zones anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. See, we make it confusing by sometimes we have 4 and sometimes we only have 3. And then we also make sure we change at the same time. So you in the UK, I think, changed this weekend, and we decided just to be obstinate that we won't change until next weekend, just to confuse the hell out of everybody. But anyway,
Phil, you're a big boy. You do whatever you want.
Thank you very much. Now, the economy in the United States, I'm hearing that it's sort of heading in the right direction, or the Labour Department seems to be thinking anyway, or that at least they're putting a spin on it to make it sound like it's heading in the right direction. Are things getting better over there?
Things have been getting better. As a matter of fact, in perspective, under the Obama administration, the private sector has had 48 straight months of job growth, with the business adding 8.7 million jobs in 48 months. This past week, for the month of February, we added 175,000 workers to new payrolls, and that's jumped up from January's projection of 129,000. So things are looking good. And as I say, in perspective, during the previous George W. Bush administration, job growth in his 8 years was just 1.1 million jobs. And Obama has added 8.7 million. So it's rising. The unemployment rate ticked up just 0.1% from 6.6 to 6.7. The bean counters are attributing that to some of the harsh weather we had in the past couple of weeks, which really doesn't make any sense because it's not like people lost lost their jobs. They didn't show up for work for a day or two. So how that affects the overall unemployment rate is anyone's guess.
Well,
things are looking good though.
Lots of jobs, shoveling snow, I would have thought, although obviously not long-term jobs, but filling jobs, shoveling snow, that would help, I would have thought. But this is all a sign, isn't it, that the idea that you spend your way, maybe you don't go too far over it, but you spend your way out of a recession. You don't starve your way out of a recession, which seems to be the conventional wisdom.
That's exactly true, and that's why there's such a push, at least from Democrats and President Obama, of raising the minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $10.10 an hour, because people who make that money will spend that money, and it's good for the economy.
Imagine that. Yeah, give people a bit of money and then they go and spend it. Actually, give people who don't have very much money and they'll spend all of it, rather than make the rich people even richer, which means they'll just save it or spend it on foreign holidays or expensive cars that are bought overseas. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? We understand that. Why doesn't everyone else get it?
Because they're not as smart as us, Phil.
That's
plain and simple.
No, that's the only solution I can come to as well. Now, you've got to love this one. Government departments spying on each other. So as I understand it, the CIA there's been an intelligence committee charged with investigating the CIA. Sounds like the CIA have been getting a little bit paranoid about all of this, and so they've started spying on the intelligence committee. Have I got that right?
Well, what happened was last December, the CIA began to suspect that it had a computer breach, because there was a Senate Intelligence Committee that obtained some internal documents from the CIA about the CIA's detention and interrogation programs. The CIA wanted to know how that Senate Intelligence Committee got those documents, so they started spying on a few senators, tracking their emails and tracking their movement on the internet to find out. Well, somebody finds out about it, and of course, it hits the proverbial fan, to the point where the Justice Department has had 2 inquiries now as to find out what's going on. Now, that having been said, let's step out of the knee-deep minutia of politicians versus any spy agency and just have a come to 007 Jesus moment, shall we? Regardless of what the agency is, whether it's the CIA, N.S.A., Homeland Security, FBI, sooner or later, everybody is going to spy on everybody for no other reason than they can, and we call it national security. That's what goes on. So conspiracy theories be damned. The best way we can wrap our little brains around this stuff is that we need to come to the terms and accept what secret, covert, classified, all of that means, and that the idea that we as an American public have some sort of entitlement to know what these covert agencies are doing and when they do it, and at least of all before they do it, is delusional. These are secret agencies that really have no accountability. When I see these Senate subcommittees coming on and saying, what are you doing? The public has a right to know. No, they don't. They don't.
I am actually amazed that there is even an intelligence committee, whether, that there's a Senate committee looking into it. Because here, there's no way in the world that would happen. They just continue along their merry way, trolling along, unsupervised. We have a lot of laws that apply to crime agencies that just don't apply to our secret intelligence agencies, to ASIO. They have zero accountability, basically. They have a judge who oversees, but the judge is appointed by the Attorney General. So long as the Attorney General is in cahoots, no one knows what's going on.
Exactly. And the heads of these agencies and the staff of these agencies do not change per administration. Unless somebody tips over or gets promoted or quits or whatever, they stay in place administration after administration after administration with the same lack of accountability. And by the way, I'm recording this, as are you.
Yeah, exactly. And it would be nice, actually. When I look at our audience figures, I instantly halve it because I assume that half the audience are the CIA and other intelligence agencies around the world listening in just to hear what we're saying. I'm glad to have you listening. Good to have you with us. Hope you're enjoying the show.
Does it affect our ratings?
Look, it all helps, doesn't it, basically? So Edward Snowden, what's the attitude to him then, generally? We've had our Prime Minister referring to him as a traitor. I think most of, a large chunk of the population here see him as a bit of a hero. He's saying he raised concerns to officials about what the National Security Agency was up to, that they were involved in unlawful operations. Wow. Who would have thought it? And they did nothing about it, is his defense. So where's that all standing now?
Well, here's the thing. He's in the beginning, he was touted as a whistleblower, and then because we didn't know what the documents were, the N.S.A. denied a lot of stuff, and then a lot of the documents came out and were proven outside of Edward Snowden about some of the nefarious things the N.S.A. was doing. So then he kind of, in some circles, became the hero. He's still in exile, living in Russia, and ain't that a happy place to be at the moment? But what he's saying now is, I don't know if this is kind of like for him to save face or get back in some sort of public relevance, but he's saying that he went to 10 N.S.A. officials and pre-reported what he was doing before he released this information to the press, and nobody would have anything to do with it. The N.S.A. says we have absolutely no record of him saying that. Now, I think what we need to do is understand what exactly Edward Snowden's role was at the N.S.A. He was a computer contractor. He was not a member of the N.S.A. He was hired as a contractor to do some computer work. He then took these documents illegally and then release them to the press. Now, what the problem is regardless of what those documents contain, and if we can separate ourselves from that for the moment, if it's possible, is that the fact that under his contract as a contractor, he had a confidential agreement not to take anything from the NSA or any company he worked for. So that is the problem. What he took was in the interest of national security, breaching national security laws. So that's what he's basically doing. He is a criminal in that aspect.
Right. But of course, he's not going to, of course he's broken the law. He's not going to be releasing information lawfully. It's obvious that he's broken the law at some point, but his conscience got the better of him, and he felt this isn't right, and something had to be done. Isn't that the truth?
The other issue is whether or not he intended, when he took this job as a contractor, or solicited to get this job as a contractor with the NSA, was solely to go in and steal documents. That's the thing that we're looking at now.
Right, and that would be why. So Mike Rogers, who's a Republican, of course, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, he said he thinks Snowden might have been working for the Russians. Now, I don't get that. If he was working for the Russians, why would he leak the secrets to the press? He would be giving it to the Russians, surely, rather than, directly, rather than saying, oh, look, yeah, I've got some information. It's in The Guardian. Buy yourself a copy.
Well, conspiracy theorists have field days with this, because is this one of those deals where the United States isn't doing much to pursue him because the information that he got could have been false information, knowing full well that Snowden would release it to the Russians? Or are they trying to save face by saying, well, the information he gave that he possesses really isn't that damaging to begin with, so it just keeps going around and around, and it gets to the point where your hair hurts. But really, he's not making a lot of ripples over here, because the information that he supposedly stole has been admitted by the NSA to begin with, and the NSA is having their own problems by now being made accountable for what they've done.
Listen, I've never heard that expression before. Till your hair hurts, you should be grateful that you got some hair to hurt, I guess. Newsweek has, which stopped printing at the end of 2012. That Newsweek used to be on the newsstands here as well, the US edition. They gave the game away, but it's back on the newsstands. It's interesting, isn't it? The publication that went under is back being published again, and they are the ones that led with this story about who founded Bitcoin. That no one knew. Apparently, it was one of those big secrets. It was such a big secret, even Edward Snowden didn't know who founded Bitcoin. But Newsweek came back on the stands and revealed who it was.
Yes, unfortunately, the man who they identified as the head of Bitcoin, Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto, who was some reclusive model train collector living out in California, he gave a 2-hour interview to the Associated Press saying, no, I'm not the founder of Bitcoin. He has no idea where this came from. He says any of the questions that was asked to him by Lee McGrath Goodman, who wrote the article for Newsweek, he says that he couldn't understand the questions, apparently. I don't know if it's a language barrier, but he's saying no, he's not the head of Bitcoin. Now, this is a strange thing, especially what's even more strange is why Newsweek would come back after 14 months, being off the shelves.
I'm getting it wrong.
But it's back now. Now, this Bitcoin thing, I don't know if you follow this at all. I mean, I never have two nickels to rub together, so anything that's about money is out of my realm of comprehension. But, there's a lot of reports out there about this virtual currency that it just suddenly disappears. Millions and millions of dollars in this digital currency is gone. Also, 28-year-old Autumn Radke, she's a CEO for Bitcoin. They found her dead in a Singapore hotel. And the authorities they were calling it an unnatural death. So this keeps getting stranger and stranger. I think the strangest part, Phil, is along with her death being unnatural, is that it's so unnatural for people to willingly buy digital money that they can't either touch, spend, access, or even have insured against fraud, which now it seems that Bitcoin is fraught with. So that is a strange thing indeed.
So the idea that Scotland is going to become independent and use Bitcoin as their currency rather than the euro, just because it's easy to get hold of, even though it doesn't exist, we'll have to throw that idea away. I love this. I love the pronunciation, by the way, of Mr. Nakamoto. Can you do that again? Have you been practicing that all day today?
Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto.
Oh, it strangely gets me excited in ways that I haven't been excited for years when you say that. It does something to me. Finally, drones. So what's happening there? You can fly drones here. You can buy a drone. Like if you buy a GoPro camera, those little tiny cameras that people are killing themselves trying to break land speed records on their push bikes and things. You can buy a drone in a like a Harvey Norman store for $500. Stick your GoPro camera on and take all these great aerial shots. The question is it legal? And I think it's the same question being asked in the United States.
The FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration that regulates all the airspace here in the United States, filed a $10,000 fine against a gentleman who filmed a commercial in 2011 for the University of Virginia. This went to court, and a judge threw out the case, claiming that the FAA didn't have a real case based on its policy. It was outside the formal rulemaking process of the FAA's policy. What I think is funny is that the FAA wanted to fine this guy for commercial use of an unmanned aerial vehicle for filming a commercial, which kind of seems redundant in that whole thing. Now, as you say, you can go out and buy a drone. These are commercially available, and we're not talking the military-style drones that are like about the size of a surfboard with wings or even larger. These are about the size of a toaster, and they're used all the time over here for a lot of reasons, and by a lot of municipalities, whether it's state, local municipalities, private people that are using it, law enforcement, and they're replacing helicopters like planes, ultralights, and balloons, which are all man-piloted. We're going to see a lot of these now being used for good reasons.
Amazon, we're talking about delivering parcels using them, for goodness sake. I mean, where's it going to end? You're going to have drones all over the place, I guess.
Does that mean I have to now shovel in all this snow that I have a drone port for my package to be delivered?
Do a little D in a circle. But this court ruling means that because it's sort of like been a bit of a grey area, but it sounds like now that this decision by the U.S. judge means that now basically it is open skies. Anybody can fly a drone, provided you don't get too close to an airport or too close to aircraft and that sort of thing.
I mean, that's a good point, and I can understand the FAA's concern because does this open up the airspace? Do you now have to file a flight plan? Is it based on the size of the drone you're using? But again, they are being used to do everything from monitoring traffic to monitoring migration patterns of animals. The real estate agencies are using them as opposed to using Google Earth, things like that. And also you're going to see, I think, photographers, the paparazzi, using them. And that's going to get into a whole privacy issue, is that do you expect privacy from the air? But it's the smoke side of the bottle, brother, so we'll see if they can put it back in. Is
your neighbor sunbathing topless is the question everyone will be asking, and now that answered, I often do sunbathe topless, by the way, if my neighbors are listening, but I don't think they want to see it. Richard Kazimer, good to talk to you. I don't know whether... did you sunbathe topless?
Yes, I do.
We'll leave it there. Talk to you
I
next
don't wear
week.
a hat.
Right.
If that's what you're referring to.
No, even though your hair hurts. Talk to you next week.
All right, take care, Phil.
Balls Radio with Phil Dobbie.